बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अस्सलामुअलैकुम। आप देख रहे हैं देसी टीवी यूएसए। अब तक की खुसूसी रिपोर्ट के साथ मैं हूं ताबिंदा गुल। इथनिक मीडिया सर्विस ने कम्युनिटी को एक खुसूसी न्यूज़ ब्रीफिंग में मदऊ किया, जिसका उन्वान था डाउन बैलेट उम्मीदवार के साथ एक गुफ्तगू जहां आपका वोट सबसे ज़्यादा अहमियत रखता है। ये ब्रीफिंग जुमरात 17 अक्टूबर को दोपहर 12 बजे से 1 बजे तक मुनक्किद की गई। शिरकत को इस अहम मीटिंग के लिए पेशगी रजिस्ट्रेशन के लिए कहा गया और बाद में उन्हें शिरकत के लिए एक लिंक के साथ तस्दीक ईमेल मौसूल हुई। ब्रीफिंग का मकसद इन छोटे इंतखाबात पर रोशनी डालना था जो अक्सर नज़रअंदाज कर दिए जाते हैं, लेकिन ये मुकामी हुक्मरानी, इंसाफ और अवामी हिफाजत पर बड़ा असर रखते हैं। ख़ास तौर पर ग्रेटर ह्यूस्टन के इलाके में जैसे जैसे इंतखाबी मरहला आगे बढ़ता है, इस गुफ्तगू ने इस बात पर जोर दिया कि वोटर्स कहाँ एक अहम फ़र्क पैदा कर सकते हैं। इस तकरीब का इनेकाद ह्यूस्टन एथनिक मीडिया की एडिटोरियल डायरेक्टर नाकिया कॉपर ने किया था और इसमें मुंदरजा झेल उम्मीदवार शामिल थे। टेरी अल्बर्टन रिपब्लिकन उम्मीदवार ब्राय हैरिस काउंटी कांस्टेबल प्रेसेंट 5, टैमिका कार्टर 400 डिस्ट्रिक्ट कोर्ट के लिए डेमोक्रेटिक उम्मीदवार, डैनियल ली डेमोक्रेटिक उम्मीदवार ब्राय हाउस डिस्ट्रिक्ट 26 के नुमाइंदे, मार्गरेट पॉइसेंट 14 कोर्ट ऑफ अपील के लिए डेमोक्रेटिक उम्मीदवार 8, एनेट रैमरेज डेमोक्रेटिक उम्मीदवार ब्राय टेक्सास एसिस्ट्रेटर कलेक्टर, मार्शल्स लॉर्ड फोर्ड बैंड काउंटी शेरिफ के लिए रिपब्लिकन उम्मीदवार। बहुत से लोगों ने उम्मीदवारों के बारे में मजीद जानने के लिए इस अहम ब्रीफिंग में शिरकत की, जो अपनी कम्युनिटीज के मुस्तकबिल को तश्कील देंगे।
Just wanted to welcome Annette Ramirez, and we're about to start. So thank you so much for joining. And Terry Albertin, we're just seconds away from starting, and I pass the baton to my colleague Nikia.
Thank you so much, Sandy. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Welcome to Houston Ethnic Media's third briefing in our Get Out the Vote series, a conversation with down ballot candidates, where your vote will matter most. I'm Nikia Cooper, your moderator for today. Now, I would like to express how happy we are that you can join us for this very important conversation focused on the often overlooked down ballot races that shape our communities. This briefing will spotlight candidates in the greater Houston area who play a crucial role in local governance, justice, and public safety. Now, as we are just 2.5 weeks away from the election, we are looking at where our vote really counts. Our speakers today include Terry Albertin, Republican candidate for Harris County Constable Precinct 5, Judge Tameika Carter, Democratic candidate for the 400th District Court, Daniel Lee, Democratic candidate for Texas House District 26, Justice Margaret Poissant, Democratic candidate for the 14th Court of Appeals Place 8, Annette Ramirez, Democratic candidate for Tax Assessor Collector, and Marshall Slott, Republican candidate for Fort Bend County Sheriff. Now, we ask our speakers to speak slowly and for our reporters to enter questions into the chat that we will take as time allows. We also encourage our speakers to monitor the questions in the chat that they can answer during the briefing. Now, each speaker will have a maximum of 5 minutes to speak, followed by a Q&A for 3 minutes with questions from our reporters on the call. We start today's briefing with Justice Margaret Poissant. First question, what was the first time you felt the real call to go into public service?
I felt the call to go into public service in 2018 for 2 reasons. One, I had practiced law for over 35 years in both criminal defense work and several areas in civil law, and the decisions I saw arising out of the Court of Appeals were not satisfactory to me. I thought there should have been better review of some of the appellate records that came up to the Court of Appeals, and I was greatly inspired by a friend of mine who had a lot of courage during her cancer diagnosis, who was a very strong Democrat. And I thought, if she can get through this treatment and show that courage, I can step forward and show the courage to try to change things. I grew up with the idea that, from my lawyer father, that the idea was you could either sit back and watch things happen, or you could step forward and try to make a change. So those are the things that inspired me to run for office.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Now, down ballot candidates are often overlooked by many. People may not have an understanding of the roles and positions that they may have a great impact on their everyday life. So, can you tell us about the job you're running for?
Yes, exactly. This is exactly what the issue that we have regarding the Court of Appeals. Many people have not heard of our courts. We're an intermediate court, but we hear appeals from 10 counties and from every type of court and case. The only higher courts are the Texas Supreme Court and the Court of Criminal Appeals. The Court of Criminal Appeals only hears criminal appeals, and the Texas Supreme Court civil appeals. We hear every type of case. We hear criminal, civil, family, probate, oil and gas, cases in every area of the law. And what we do is we review the record and we review the briefs that are brought before the Court of Appeals to decide whether or not the decisions made by the trial courts and by the trial court judges are fair, are well-reasoned, are accurate in regard to the facts and the law. So our job is very important. The reason why most people have not heard of our court is because we don't hear trial cases. We do not have witnesses come into our court. We only hear attorney argument, and we are limited to the record that is brought up to us from the trial courts. So we don't have the number of people from the public coming in to listen to what we do. We are, as some of my colleagues say, the most important court that no one knows about. Now, people are always welcome to come to our courts. We are courts of public record, and the oral arguments that are presented to us by the attorneys who argue the law are available on YouTube. The reason why we're the last stop for justice, frankly, is because the Court of Criminal Appeals and the Texas Supreme Court listen to cases that they take from the entire state and they choose. We hear every appeal that is assigned to us from all these different levels of courts in all of the 10 counties. And those counties are Austin, Brazoria, Fort Bend, Galveston, Harris, Chambers, Colorado, Waller, Washington, and Grimes County. So it's a big area and it's a lot of cases. And what we do is very important.
Okay. And so what are you planning to do once you are in office? What are you hoping to achieve?
Well, I have been in office now for almost 6 years. The Courts of Appeals are 6-year terms. And I was elected in 2018 together with my colleagues. What I hope to achieve is to continue to respect the rights of every individual in the state of Texas. I would hope to continue to have well-reasoned opinions and to dissent and concur, which is to have separate writings when I disagree with the majority. We have 9 justices on each Court of Appeals, the 1st and 14th that sit in Houston. We sit in panels of 3. I am also the chair of the appellate committee for the Child Protection Section, which seeks to increase the pro bono appellate services available for members of our community, and it seeks to increase the quality of representation. These committees are very important. I was on a TDIC, which is the Texas Defense Indigent Council Legislative Work Group, and I hope to be on that work group again. And that work group makes suggestions to the legislature about changes in the statutes. So these are important things that I do. We also have a great internship program. I'm also a member of the National Association of Women Judges, which awards scholarships to 2 students from each of the 3 law schools in Houston. And we look at several factors. We don't always take the person with the highest GPA or the best writing skills. We give opportunities to people of diversity. I think this is very important because our judiciary, our interns, we should all reflect the people in our community.
Thank you. Now we have an additional question for you. Can you give us an example of a case where your court ruled on that you felt was impactful?
Yes. I was on a panel where the trial court had decided that someone who was seeking the identity of a woman who had helped another woman with a medical procedure was trying to get information as to who that woman was so that he could add her to the lawsuit. The trial court denied that request. That case came up on appeal to the 14th Court of Appeals. We affirmed that denial. And the case eventually, the gentleman dropped that case. It was important to protect that woman's identity and her rights.
Thank you so much, Justice Poissant. I appreciate your sharing out with us today. And now I'm checking, is Daniel Lee on?
I'm here, Miss Cooper.
Hi. Okay, so I would like to toss some questions to you. Same questions. What was the first time you felt the real call to go into public service? Share with us.
Well, I'll start off at the beginning. My parents, they're two Asians from China and Philippines. They met in New York, and then they came down to Texas because they saw a lack of good Chinese food. So they came down from New York, brought the awesome recipes that they had from back home, mixed it together, and then boom, here you are. You got 4 amazing restaurants back in the 70s and 80s. And, everyone that's here in the Houston, Dallas area, you're welcome. So having said all that, I basically was in politics since I was a kid. We were protesting the Tiananmen Square, basically I'll call it a massacre in China. But we did it in Dallas. My dad took me to that when, I was a little kid. And since then we worked on campaign after campaign, whether it was Bush, Richards, what have you, we worked on it. My calling specifically started from there, but later on, my parents almost got eminent domain by one of the counties here in Texas, and I had to come back from undergraduate from UT Austin to go help them out. I eventually went to law school so that people would have access to justice like my parents, and they didn't. They didn't have the funds to continue to pay for the lawyer. It almost bankrupted them, right? But as I became a lawyer, I started noticing that a lot of the laws here start from the legislature, right? The judges can only interpret them and rule on them, but all the laws actually start in the legislature. And so I actually worked for a legislator when I was in Austin for several years and worked on her campaign also, right? So I have a lot of experience there. My call for public service probably started when I was like 6 or 7. I just didn't realize it until later on. But I think I would mix that in with just making sure that the average person and the small guy, the small businesses have access to somebody that will continue to fight for them, right? And so I think that is the long story of my calling.
All right. So that's your calling. Can you tell us about the job you're running for?
So the job I'm running for is state representative. It's one of 150 votes. Each district is made of 200,000 voters or in population. So when it's drawn, they got to draw it for that many people. So sometimes it could be wider, sometimes smaller. My district is Katy, Richmond, Rosenberg, all in the Fort Bend area. And so we vote on the laws that you see, right? So the laws that it could be anything from, open carry to, your bathroom or your women's rights laws. It could be anything from, something as simple as speeding and how that's written. In fact, I'm actually on the family law board. I'm a fellow of the Texas Family Law and Texas Law Foundation. So I actually am a part of making the laws already. I mean, I'm already doing that for the last couple of years that I'm on that board. So your family code, if someone ever gets in a divorce or they have to do a custody battle, some of that legislation we edit as a group. We edit that and then we submit it to the legislator. So I'm currently already part of the process. So, I'm ready to go day one.
All right. Now I have a question from one of our reporters, Todd Smith of Regal Media. He said, what will you do to ensure that the will of the people is honored when it comes to certifying election results?
Well, when it comes to certifying election results, like, because I'm a lawyer, we follow the law, we follow the Constitution, right? And so, I mean, I'll say this, as far as that's concerned, we meet once every 2 years, right? And so we make the laws, next year. So the only time we would be dealing with certifying election results is to craft the law to protect the people. So if there's any laws that are being presented, any bills that are being presented in this legislature that I feel violates or suppresses our vote, I'm definitely going to vote against that. But at the same time, we always have to work across the aisle and work with each other, crafting law that actually makes sense for everyone as a whole is better than not having any laws at all, right? Because we don't want to live in a land. The other thing that I would do to protect our voters, I think that was the first part, and protect our citizens, is to make sure that we're not passing voucher laws, right? Because our children are first and paramount, and we cannot have our public schools get decimated by the creaming process that charter schools and public schools do. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, I have to go back to Judge Poissant, and I have a question that came in that I did not see, and I didn't want to short you. So if Justice Poissant, could you answer this question for us? Has public respect for the courts changed given the political debates on the Supreme Court?
I believe the public perception has changed about the courts. This is why I think it's so important that the justices here and every judge maintains their integrity and maintains their independent viewpoints. It's very difficult to convince the public that judges are doing the right thing if they can't rely on the judges' integrity and their ethics. We have a strong code of ethics here in the state of Texas, the Judicial Canon of Ethics, and we follow those ethical tenets. It's very important for us. And in fact, to stay above and beyond our personal opinions and rule with impartiality.
All right. Thank you so much, Judge Poissant. Now, Daniel, I do need to go back to you. And I'm just saying this because my chats are coming in hard and heavy right now. So there's great interest in this. So just keep it up here. What is your biggest goal, Mr. Lee, if you get elected?
My biggest goal is, I don't know if y'all know, but there's approximately somewhere between 20 and $30 billion in surplus in our state of Texas. It is the largest surplus in the history of the United States that Joe Biden gave to our governor Abbott for infrastructure. Unfortunately, that money wasn't transferred over to our schools, to our teachers, to our school districts that need them. And we got schools like Plano and Richardson, Texas, which is similar to my district in Katy or Sugar Land, right? Closing down two schools, and they're in flush areas, which makes no sense. So my main goal is to protect our kids, because just like my parents came to the United States so that me and my sister and their grandkids can have a better life, we're not going to be around to watch our kids, and like when they're having their kids sometimes, because we're not going to be around forever. So we want to make sure that the education stays in place, because we all want to live in an area where everybody's educated. I mean, that's the goal, right? The goal is to have us come together as a society and pick each other up from the bootstraps, not have an uneducated population with underfunded schools where the teachers are struggling to they're asking the parents like myself to pay for school supplies. can't even afford, our schools can't even afford school supplies right now. And they're asking the parents for that. And that shouldn't be the case when we're sitting on such a huge plethora of cash. And same thing with our property taxes. Shouldn't be that high, but the state has the ability to help us out on that. And it's just not happening. And I want to make that happen. And that's a promise.
That's a promise. Thank you. Thank you so very much for that. Okay, now we are caught up with the chat coming in to me, and I'd like to shift to Judge Tameika Carter. Welcome.
Good morning. Nope, afternoon. We're at afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So I'm going to throw out the same questions to you. Okay. So what was the first time you felt the call to go into public service?
So I had an interest in criminal justice reform pretty early on. I was in 8th grade when the Rodney King case was in litigation, and those officers went on trial, and to see a couple of them found not guilty. And I saw what that did to my community. And my mother had that tough conversation with me about how our court system isn't always fair. And having learned that so early in high school, I had an interest in working in our courts. And so when I was out of law school, or in law school, I guess, moving out, I made the decision that I was going to go into public service. And so I chose the district attorney's office. Having interned doing defense work and prosecution, I felt that that was a way that I could make a great impact, learning how much power prosecutors have with working with law enforcement, screening cases, making charge decisions, making decisions on assisting judges with warrants. And so just to see how instrumental and important the prosecutor's role was in our court system, I decided that I was going to choose a career in public service and serve my community that way. So I'm able to work on the side of public safety and protecting victims, but also if there was an injustice, I think that was happening, I had the power to tell an officer, okay, I don't think the evidence is there. Okay, I don't think this is a case that we should be prosecuting. And so I felt that I could be most impactful that way. And so that was how I started my career in public service, was through the district attorney's office. And then it led me to the bench, completing my first term, living in Fort Bend County. When I moved out here, there was not a single African-American elected countywide judge in our county for over the first 10 years of me practicing. And so eventually we made attempts of running more out here, and we finally made that change first in 2018. And then I was elected in 2020. So just making sure that we had judges who reflected our community, right? And so that was important for me. And so I just kind of continued the work I was doing in just another way, taking it to the bench.
All right. So you told us a lot. Can you tell us just a little bit more about the role that currently right now?
Yeah, so I am a district court judge, and in Fort Bend County, unlike Harris County, I think a lot of y'all are based in Houston, our courts are not all separate. And so my court, a district court, I handle felony criminal cases, but as well as civil cases. And so they're kind of split that way. I also serve as our local administrative district judge. And so I handle the administrative functions of the court. They come to me. So when we have issues with court staff, we have the hiring of interpreters, our need for interpreters, or issues with court reporters, that all kind of comes to me, in addition to my duties of presiding over the 400 District Court. I also serve as the judge over our C Court, which is a diversion court for young offenders. Again, always wanted to be a part of reforming our courts and finding out how we get, people out of the court system. Diversion programs are very important to me. And so I'm currently the judge over our young offender court, but I've also served over our drug diversion court, our felony drug diversion court. And when I was a prosecutor, I was in our mental health diversion court, in addition to my other normal litigation rotations that I did. So in a nutshell, I preside over felonies, civils, pretrial, jury trial, and do a lot of the administrative functions here around the courthouse. And I'm seeking re-election to continue doing that.
All right. And so that's a lot, with the juvenile court system, or not juvenile, young offenders and everything that you've been doing. So what is biggest goal that you're hoping to achieve that you haven't already? What's
So
on that outlook?
Okay, so our coming into Fort Bend, we're a growing county, and we have a lot of areas where we need to update. And so one of the issues that we came in, we had space issues with our courtrooms. We had 2 judges when I took over as administrative judge who didn't even have assigned courtrooms. They are floating around, borrowing the courts. And so our growth has not matched our construction in our courtrooms. So one thing that I took on as administrative judge was getting our construction project actually approved. And so we now have 3 courtrooms who have been approved. Constructions with groundbreaking soon will be done by the summer of next year. The next phase, what I am hoping I can support our county in doing, is getting the approval of at least 2 new district courts. I don't make that decision. That's the legislature that decides it. But we are lobbying our local commissioners to approve the funding for the local side of it. And then we will petition to get the district courts approved, and hopefully the legislature approves that. So just the administrative function, that's one of my big goals, to work with our commissioners to get some courts approved. I also want to grow our young offender court. This is a new court. This actually came online this year. And so we have 15 program participants, and I am seeking to grow this diversion court to get it to where I have the drug court, where we had over 40 participants in that court. And so as we work young folks through, they complete the program and their case is dismissed. And so we're trying to bring in more community partners so that we can serve more young folks. And so my big goal is to grow, double in size this program that we've just started this year. We've also started a new initiative here through our behavioral health services. It's called Always Parenting. And that program seeks to assist defendants who are in jail to transition back into the community and build a relationship with their children. And so we have added parenting classes back in the jail, which were gone once COVID hit, in addition to giving them the resources and the counseling needed to help them kind of work on the bond with their children. My father went to prison when I was fairly young, and so I know how that severs relationships when a parent is incarcerated. And so that was also very important to me. So our behavioral health department saw a need there, and they've taken that on, and I serve on that task force. And I'm hoping for us to grow that program as well.
Thank you. One of our reporters, Daniel Albertin, says that you have a lot on your plate. How are you able to keep up with so many different cases and serve the people efficiently?
So the good thing is I was a prosecutor in Harris County, and Harris County is one of the largest district attorney offices in the nation. And we're like up there with New York, Chicago, and LA. And so having been trained in that kind of environment, I'm just used to a heavy workload. But I keep a good work-life balance. I have 2 kids. My husband's pretty helpful with that. And I keep a workout routine so I don't lose my sanity. And I'm just pretty structured. I'm a pretty organized person, but I'm used to a busy case load from working in that big office. So it's not too bad.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And so if you don't mind, we will now move on to Mr. Marshall Slott.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Slott.
Line here. Hello, Ms. Cooper,
Okay.
Ms. Post,
Hello.
and Houston Ethnic Media. Thank you guys for inviting me to this forum.
All right. So can you tell us the first time that you felt the call to go into public service?
Yes, ma'am. I'm a 3rd generation Fort Bend County resident. Raised my family here. My mom and dad were in law enforcement when I was a kid. And unfortunately, my parents divorced, but not complaining about that. That's just life sometimes. But both my parents, one of them worked for the Sugar Land Police Department and one of them worked for the Fort Bend County Sheriff's Office while I was growing up. So I had my mom, my dad, and my extended police families, as well as a great community there in Sugar Land where I grew up. So by the time I was in junior high, there was absolutely no doubt that I was going to be a police officer when I grew up. It is my passion, it is my expertise, and it is my calling.
Yes. All right. And can you tell us about the role of the job you're hoping to fill?
The sheriff, hoping to fill the role of sheriff for Fort Bend County. So it's a big role. Looking forward to getting in there. sheriff's responsible for policing the unincorporated areas of Fort Bend County, running a safe and efficient and effective county jail, and securing the county courts and district courts and movements of prisoners through there so that we can have efficient court system as well. Those are the three primary roles of a sheriff. I'm looking forward to getting in there because I believe wholeheartedly that our current sheriff has failed our county. He's a retired Houston police officer who's tried to take a Houston Police Department square peg and shove it into a Fort Bend County Sheriff's Office round hole. It's just not working, and they continue to try to make it the Houston Police Department, which it is not. The Houston Police Department serves well for the Houston Police Department, but it doesn't fit the model or operations out here in Fort Bend County. And what that's led to is a decrease. We are short 160 personnel in our sheriff's office when our other county law enforcement agencies are fully or nearly fully staffed. And it's led to a broken culture. There's a failure in leadership at the sheriff's office. And so I want to change that culture and primarily take care of the deputies first so that they can better serve the community. Because if our deputies aren't well, physically, mentally, in their personal lives and in their work lives, then I think it leads to a lesser degree of good service in the community. We have many great professional law enforcement. We have many great law enforcement professionals here in Fort Bend County, and I just want to empower them and encourage them and support them in being more effective in their roles to keep our community safe.
And what is the greatest goal you hope to achieve? I know
the first goal is changing the culture at the sheriff's office. I want to install servant leadership at the top, and I will demand that servant leadership model all the way down to the line personnel, both civilian and sworn. I truly believe that if there are led with that servant mind, from that servant leadership mindset, meaning they're empowered, they're trained, they're supported in their decision making, that translates to them being servant leaders to our community, which I believe all law enforcement professionals are. We are servants of the community. And right now, they're somewhat defending themselves within the agency and having to fight crime on the streets. And that's a difficult task. Either one of those are a difficult task. But when you combine them both, it leads to fighting two fronts, and that's just not doable. So my number one goal is to change the culture of the organization so that the deputies and civilian personnel feel supported from the administration, which I then think frees them up to do their jobs better on the street and in serving our community.
All right. Thank you. I have a great question coming in from the chat from Mr. Todd Smith. Now, Todd, would you like to ask this question yourself?
Yes, I would. Mr. Slott, you mentioned being short with personnel, but over the last 4 years, we've seen a lot of police officers face scrutiny because of police brutality, and there have been protests all over the world with the Black Lives Matter movement. How hard has that made it in recruiting new officers to join the force when some believe that if they do their job, they might face charges or termination for just doing normal police work?
So it's a great question. Recruiting is a significant issue in Fort Bend County and law enforcement nationwide, just much like we have recruiting issues in our military. There seems to be, there's this perception in law enforcement that there's a lack of support from the community. So why go into a role like that? Law enforcement at the heart of it is service to the community. And so I believe as a leader in law enforcement, it's our job to set up the environment such that they are supported, encouraged to do their jobs. We set the ditch lines as leaders through policies and procedures. And we as leaders in law enforcement demand accountability from ourselves. That's been one outgrowth of some of this scrutiny is we demand more of ourselves now, and rightfully so. Unfortunately, there are bad actors in every sector of our lives, and law enforcement is in that sector. So as law enforcement leaders, we want to call out the bad actors as well, if not more, because it stains our profession. So when you go to recruiting, it's about showing them that they have the right environment to work in. They're supported. They're given the guidelines and training and mentorship that needs to occur, because there is a transition of a transfer of education and experience from more tenured law enforcement officers to younger ones. There's a steep learning curve in law enforcement. We have the tools now to not only police effectively, but to demonstrate to the public that we're policing effectively. And I think when you put all those factors together, and put the right leadership in place, I think it makes an organization more more attractive to those who are encouraged to enter the law enforcement profession. But I also think it starts with our youth and in high schools, as far as showing that law enforcement is a great profession. It's a noble profession, and it's a necessary profession. And not everybody wants to pursue college. I think college education is helpful. Having educated professional law enforcement officers is necessary. Doesn't always require a college degree. But I think when we get into our youth and that high school age, that's a great, that's a rich environment for recruiting folks to come into law enforcement.
Thank you so much. Now, Mr. Slide, I'm going to move on to the next person, but I want to tell you this. You have some questions coming into that chat, so I would love to encourage you to go in and answer some questions from everyone as we move on to Mr. Terry Albertin. Mr.
Thank you.
Albertin.
Is it okay to respond in the chat?
Yes, please respond in the chat.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Albertin, how are you today? Making sure we have you
I'm
on.
there. I had to find the mute button. Doing fine. Thank you.
That's why I asked to give you that time. So now that you're on, can you tell us the first time you felt the call to go into public service?
Sure. When I was a teenager, getting close to graduating high school, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Just knew that my dad's rules were when you turned 18, you're an adult. Adults don't live with their parents. So I looked at joining the military. My brother had already gone off to the Army. They were offering the GI Bill then, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to get in there, serve my country, get some college money, and figure out what I want to do when I got out. So I really enjoyed being in the military, learned a lot, made a lot of friends. That was back during Desert Storm. I spent some time overseas in the Gulf War. Came back and I thought, man, I really enjoyed being, the camaraderie, the group, the feeling like I was doing something that made a difference. So, changed one uniform for another one, decided to serve my community instead of my country. So I had met, my mom was working at JP Court back then. So I'd met a few constables that were always in and out of the JP Court. And I thought, well, let me go see how that job might be. So I did right along and it just fell in love with it. It felt like a place I belonged. And it, the same like I said with the military, just felt like I had an opportunity to make a difference and serve those around me. So that felt important to me. It gives me a little sense of pride and we all want to do something to make our parents proud of the person they raised. So that was important to me.
Yes. So can you tell us all a little bit about the role that you're running for? Your
yes,
position?
ma'am. I've been here with the constable's office for 30 years now. So, and one of the questions I'm always getting is, what is a constable? You used to, knowing what a police officer or what a cop does, but a constable is a little bit different. Initially, constables were mainly officers of the court. They're there to serve papers, civil papers, and like if you're getting sued because of your business or the child custody case or something like that. But in Harris County, we've branched out. There was a need back in the 70s for more law enforcement, and the county back then came up with what's called the contract deputy program, and it gives areas an opportunity to, if they want extra law enforcement, to supplement the county to have extra officers patrol in their area, and that took off. The community's really latched onto that program, and it's gotten really, really large. In fact, most of our deputy positions here are contract deputy positions. So it's a great job. It's one of the few ones left where you actually get to do some real community policing. The officers have time to actually visit with people and get to know those that are in the area they patrol. And that's something I've always enjoyed. I never really wanted to, policing can sometimes be very impersonal because you have another call you got to get to. So you have to, when the calls are stacked like that, you don't get to have that personal time and connection with the community that we're allowed to have. So I've really enjoyed, and that's kind of what's kept me here at Precinct 5. started off as a deputy, and I've worked my way through all the ranks, and I'm an assistant chief here now. So my constable, Ted Heap, he is my third constable. He is retiring. So he's been with Harris County for 40 years, been serving here at Precinct 5 as the elected constable for the past 8. And he just wants to go spend time with grandkids. So I told him that, you know, if the public will have me, I'll take up the torch and try to keep this place as respectable and trusted by the community as it has been over the years.
Okay. So if you replace Constable Heath, what are you planning to do once you're in office? What is the biggest goal you're hoping to achieve?
If I can leave this precinct, you know, the way it is now or better, I've done a good job, because it's difficult. Like Marshal Slot was saying, with new people coming and going all the time, it's hard to keep the house clean. It's a challenge. So we make sure we look into everything that's going on. So I want to try to keep our reputation, the one that we've built. But something I've noticed that we could do a lot better at is the social media aspect. You know, everyone wants their news now. You know, if there's some red lights going on a block over from your house, you don't want to know a week from now what happened. You really want to know, hey, what's going on over there? And one of the other constable agencies, that they've even expanded that quite a bit, where they have an app for your phone now, so you can see things as they're occurring, which is very helpful with transparency and letting people know, you know, what is going on in their community. Because you might go to bed thinking, you know, somebody got stabbed or murdered behind you, when it was really just an older person that had a heart attack. So all you knew is there were red and blue lights. And I really want to get that information out there to people, so they feel more informed on what's going on around them.
Okay. Now, I've noticed that you talked a little bit about the community policing and the personal connections with the community. And I know one of the, or correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the duties, or one of the things that constables do is, let's say when someone is served an eviction notice, right?
Yes.
And you have to, or we've seen, or in the newsroom, I've written plenty of stories where it's the constable's office has shown up and they are putting someone's items on the curb. And we don't see things from your perspective. We look at you, or people in the community look at you as the bad guy, right? What do you think, what is in place now, or what can you help put in place to where we're not just putting their items out? Is there something in place to help them go somewhere? Like, can we help, you know, what do you all do in your constable's office when you're faced with that?
Yeah, I've never served in our civil division, but I know that's been an issue. And in the past, they used to actually put that stuff in storage, but then the storage fees would get so high that no one could afford to get their stuff out. So the change was made somewhere to where, here's your stuff right here, so you can go ahead and take it without having to incur all the storage fees on it. But the eviction process is not an overnight process. It's a very long process. So no one gets evicted without lots and lots of notice. I know it's still hard when it occurs, and that would be a challenge to try to find where. I mean, the court it's not the constables. Understand that. We're officers of the court. The court is saying you need to leave that residence. So we as constables are carrying that out as a directive of the court. So it's not actually the constable's office evicting you out of your house or your apartment or whatever. That's, you know, the apartment or the landlord has done that through the court, and we don't have any leeway on the deal. We just get a paper from the court that says, go do this. And as we are officers of the court, that's what we have to go do. So it's not a, you know, that's not a fun part, a pleasant part of the job, obviously, but you're carrying out the duties that the court has told you to do.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now we would like to move to Miss Annette Ramirez. Miss Ramirez?
Hi there. Good afternoon. I was editing my name, so sorry.
No problem. All right. Can you tell us the first time you felt the call to go into public service?
So for me, it's been more of a lifelong um, feeling of serving that I believe citizens have an obligation to do, and it came from my parents. My mom was a school teacher for over 40 years. I actually grew up on the border, and my father was a dentist in Mexico, although I was born and raised in El Paso, and so he would drive over the international bridge every day. And I always saw my parents serving in some capacity. And when I was young, it was helping folks navigate the immigration system when it was actually navigable and easier to understand what was needed. And so from an early age, I saw my mom and my father helping people get their residency, helping people get their citizenship. And so pretty much since I became an adult, I've served in one capacity or another. And that just depended on the age and stage of my children. And so when they were younger, I served in capacities and activities in which they were involved. PTO president, secretary, treasurer, all of those things. As they got older, it just turned to HOA service, right? I could do a little bit more. And now I am an empty nester, and my 3 kids have either graduated high school or college. And so the position that I'm running for is something that I've done in my career. I'm a property tax attorney. And so I saw an opportunity to serve in that capacity. And so that was part of my decision, helped me make that decision to run for tax assessor.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what the tax assessor does?
Sure, because I know it's the sexiest race on the ballot, and it's what everybody is excited about, which is property taxes. So this office has several functions, actually. They assess and collect property taxes. So your city, your county, your MUD, they set a property tax rate. Your appraisal district determines value of property and creates tax accounts. And the tax assessor takes those 2 bits of information and sends out a bill and is responsible for collecting that money and then dispersing it to the relevant taxing entities for which it collected. The office also manages voter registration, which is very, very important. And for those folks that are in Harris County, the voter registration function had actually left our tax assessor's office in 2020 or 2021 and returned to the tax office in 2023 by mandate of our Texas legislature. And so we also handle voter registration, and we handle vehicle registration, the collection of the hotel and occupancy tax, which most people aren't aware that we do. And so relatively speaking, this office touches almost every single citizen in Harris County at some point or another, whether they're registering their vehicles, transferring title on a car, or paying their property taxes or registering to vote. So we have a huge customer base, and we're very, very busy at office.
All right. So what are you planning to do in office, and what are you hoping to achieve? What's your greatest goal?
Yeah, so a little bit about me. I have been a property tax attorney for the last 23 years. It's actually the only thing I've done since I graduated law school. I graduated law school in 2000, took a couple of years off to have a baby, and then went to work, and I'm still working for Aldine ISD, which is a school district on the north side of town. And I manage all of their delinquent property tax litigation and help run our tax office. And so one thing we've never had in Harris County is a tax assessor that actually knows property taxes before they take office. And so this office has not been serving the citizens of Harris County like it should, because property taxes are very complicated. And if you don't know the law, then you don't know how you can help people. And so I'd really love the opportunity to use this experience I've gained over the last 23 years, which is I know the nitty gritty of property taxes and title and how that affects folks' ability to minimize their property tax burden. And so we really need to be creating a lot more education and outreach and educating folks on how they can minimize that burden and helping them navigate some very, very complicated property tax issues. We're also not offering our citizens the various types of payment plans that the tax code allows us to, although all other counties surrounding Harris County are offering those. We are not. Right now in Harris County, in order to get on a payment schedule, you have to go delinquent on your property taxes in order to do that. What I would like to propose, which the law allows us to do, which there's no reason why we shouldn't be doing it, is allowing people to escrow their property taxes and pay them in monthly payments in advance so that they don't have one large property tax payment in January. They've actually paid it in 10 payments in the year before. And then that way they don't risk going delinquent. There's also some other types of payment plans that we can offer to our businesses and to our non-homestead property owners that would make it easier for them to pay their property taxes. So that is something I'd like to do almost immediately when I go into that office, as well as looking at our voter registration. We do not have enough people right now doing our voter registration in Harris County. When that function came back to the tax office, the staff that was doing our outreach decreased from about 20 year-round outreach team to 5. Our county is just too big, and we should have significantly more resources dedicated to making sure that we are reaching out to voters 365 days a year and all years, not just election years. And so that is where I really like to focus. It's a very transactional office right now, and it really needs to be more customer service centered. And we need to be helping our citizens navigate these very complicated issues.
All right. Thank you so much. And that concludes
Thank
our
you.
round of questions, but for the same 3, but I'm going to go back and give everyone a chance because we have some more time to answer 2 final questions for us here that are of great interest. Let me come back. Okay. So the question is going to be, what is the cost? Let me get there. We're moving up. What cost to your personal life, your public service? What effect does it have of your personal life? And is it worth it? Do you feel it's worth it? We could start with you, Annette.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I've been a public servant my entire career, and luckily that was for a school district. And so I am a single parent, and working at the school district has really been a blessing. But when you transition to running for office, it's a very, very different world. And timing is everything. And so I started running for office. I have twin daughters that are now 18, but they were seniors in high school last year. So we had a very, very busy senior year, me running for office, but we managed it, and I didn't miss any senior events, and now they have graduated, they've started college. I'm an empty nester, and the timing is perfect for me to be able to transition to a new job, hopefully tax assessor collector for Harris County, where I'm then able to focus all of my energy. So I have luckily been able to juggle that. It has not really impacted me negatively in any way. I really like staying busy, and so I've been fortunate enough where the timing just worked out for me. But it is definitely a commitment. It's definitely a second full-time or a third full-time job if you've decided to enter public service. You have your family, you have your job that pays the bills, and then you have your third job of campaigning and running for office, sometimes for a year and a half for some people. I've enjoyed it, and I hope to continue to be able to serve in this capacity moving forward.
Thank you. And then we'll go backwards, and we'll go right back up to Mr. Albertin. What do you feel are the personal costs of being in public service? Do I see you?
I'm sorry there. Can you hear me now?
That's okay. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. I really enjoyed it, but in my form of public service as a police officer, you're held to a much higher standard, which I'm completely okay with. And what I'm talking about is when just the average person gets pulled over and gets arrested for a DWI, you don't hear about it. But when a police officer does that, it makes the news. So it things like social media, like I spoke about earlier, things that some people post on social media, you don't post as a police officer. That information's out there. The public expects more of you. And I've always kind of honored the fact that it keeps me going in the right direction, knowing that, hey, people are expecting you to do the right things. And it's, I don't know, I don't want to say it's an honorable thing to do. At the same time, you really have to be cautious on what's going on around you. I'll give you an example. I was living and patrolling both in the Katy area for many years.
And we got like 30 more seconds for you. So
okay. And I started noticing I was seeing the same people in the grocery store that I arrested over and over again. And I'm out with the family at James Coney Island, eating with the wife and the kids. And my wife says, hey, 2 tables back, there's some guys that keep staring at you. Well, I turn around. It's a couple of gang members that I've arrested before on drug charges. And I'm there with my wife and kids. And I started thinking, you know what? I think I might need to either move where I police or move where I live. So you really got to be cautious on what's going on around you, because there's people out there to do you harm. You've seen what's happened to some of our officers in the past. So
thank you. And thank you for your service, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Slatt. What do you feel is the personal cost of being in public service?
I don't think it's a cost. I've been in public service since I was 20 years old. I'm 53 years old now. It's just a way of life, serving the community. Volunteered in my church for many, many years as a deacon. I volunteered in scouting. I volunteered in youth athletic leagues. It's about serving others. I think that's where we get satisfaction in life. That gives us a purpose and allows us to be of value to our communities. It is a personal cost. I'm a husband, a father, and a grandfather. My wife, our kids are grown and all on their own. With our 2 grandbabies, we get to spend a lot of time with them. A little bit of that has been impacted, but I think when you sign up for public service, you recognize those areas where you're going to lose some things or you're going to miss out on some opportunities. But I think ultimately, if you follow your faith, you follow your family's values, and the love of your family and the love of your community, it all balances out. So looking forward to this opportunity to continue to serve and protect Fort Bend County.
Thank you so much. Judge Carter.
Thank you for that question. So I do think this is where I'm supposed to be. This is a space I've always wanted to work in, our criminal courts and be in our court system. And so that's why I did so much of my time in prosecution. I have had this same kind of incident as our constable described. I have to be more aware of my surroundings. I have run into defendants' families. And when you are a felony prosecutor and you sometimes are responsible for putting a signature on the paperwork that sends someone to prison, everyone's not happy with you. And it may be the right decision, but I am actually having to be much more aware of my surroundings. But I learned it as a prosecutor and it carried on to the bench. So I do know that I make tough decisions. They are the right, I firmly believe they're the right decisions, but that person or their family may not believe it was the right decision. So just being more aware of my surroundings. I've had to change my gym one time when a defendant found me there, but luckily I've never been harmed. But otherwise, it's been well worth it. This is the work I want to do, and I want to continue doing this work. The benefit far outweighs the risk of the job.
Thank you. Mr. Lee, I see you here. Unmute, Mr. Lee. You're muted.
Okay, sorry, I was having a hard time unmuting. So thank you for that question. I'd like to echo what Judge Carter stated. I've been running, this is my second time running, so the last couple years at least. And being that, I am an attorney for the last 17 years. I've seen it, what Judge Carter was talking about, that, when you're in an adversarial position, sometimes you get people that may harass you or threaten you and things like that. And definitely running, I've already experienced that somewhat, but we are going to maintain and continue to be courageous, right? So is my family. And I think that is personal growth for me and my family. And we're not afraid. We're going to continue fighting for the citizens of Fort Bend, of the state of Texas. And I find it to be an honor, and it's a great opportunity for us to be able to do that because it's just something that we have to do if we want to move forward in this community and move forward in the state.
Thank you so much. And we begin with Justice Poissant, and we would like to end with Justice Poissant.
Hi, thank you for the question. There's definitely a difference as a public servant. I had a very successful law practice. I always gave back to the community by representing people pro bono, individually, into the Houston Volunteer Lawyers Association. I believe that there are things greater than ourselves, that are goals that are greater than ourselves for the public good. And this is why I think for me, it's not really considered a cost at all. It's something that we need to do to give back to the community, to give back to the people of the state of Texas. I think they deserve judges with experience, judges with knowledge, judges with integrity. And I believe in that goal of giving back.
Thank you. And on behalf of everyone out here and everyone with the Houston Ethnic Media, we are so thankful that you all came on here today to speak to us, help educate us, so that we can educate others with our reporting and just making sure that we keep the community engaged and informed. And with that, we will give you back the rest of your day. We will be sending some follow-ups, and we'll send you all links to all of the coverage that comes out of this. So thank you. Let me make sure that I have the final thing. Everything is gone. Everything is finished. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
We are excited to announce that early voting has officially begun across America. This is an important opportunity for US citizens to make their voices heard ahead of Elections Day. Early voting allows you to cast your ballot at your convenience to a candidate you like, ensuring that your vote counts in shaping the future of your communities and country. Desi TV USA, DTV NN, and our OTT platform DTV Flix, Pakistan Chronicle, South Asian Chronicle encourage everyone to take advantage of this opportunity. Check your local elections office for detail on early voting locations and hours in your area. Remember, your participation is vital to US democracy and your democratic rights. Let's make your voice heard. Please stay engaged and must vote and tell others to vote. There are a few Pakistani Americans contesting elections throughout the USA and especially in Texas Fort Bend County, Harris County, Dallas County, Bexar County. Early voting October 21st through November 1st, 2024. Election day always is only Tuesday in November, and it's on November 5th, Tuesday. If you missed early voting, it is important to note that the general election in the United States is scheduled for Tuesday, November 5th, 2024.
You came to this country for a brighter future for you and your loved ones. You've made it this far. Now it's time to become a citizen. With citizenship, you gain the right to vote, access to federal jobs, the ability to keep your family closer, and the freedom to travel with a U.S. passport. These are just a few of the benefits waiting for you when you become eligible. We're here to help you through the process with free resources and personalized guidance. Together, we can make it easier. Get started at becomeacitizentoday.com.
Viewers, keep you informed of the devastations and relief efforts caused by the hurricane in Milton, Florida, USA.
Meet the tools that help reduce flood risk across Harris County. From channels to stormwater detention basins to floodplain preservation, the Harris County Flood Control District manages each one with a single goal: flood risk reduction. Because they impact our quality of life with benefits like avoided damages, an expanded urban forest, and room for trails and green spaces, Flood risk reduction efforts have an impact on our quality of life. Learn more at hcfcd.org.
अब तक के लिए इतना ही। देखते रहिए देसी टीवी यूएसए, DTVNN और हमारा OTT प्लेटफॉर्म DTV Flex, जहां आप 3000 से ज़ायद चैनल्स देख सकते हैं। सो स्टे ट्यून्ड एंड स्टे विद अस।